Well, I haven't posted or recorded anything much in recent days, just because about half of the time off, and I've got to go to work tomorrow, which really sucks. But half the time off, I was sick, and then I was recovering from my shots. But I didn't. The side effects only lasted about a day with that. So those double shots, the RSV and COVID. And so I've been kind of taking it easy. I've been watching a lot of DVDs that I have. I have a whole slew of television series, vintage television series. And so I just finished the 435th episode of Ozzie and Harriet. So it took me a little over a year to watch the entire series beginning to end. And that's not counting radio, and I don't know how many of those are in existence because I never heard the radio version of Ozzie and Harriet. But that show, I just love it. I think it's underrated. I think it's one of the best sitcoms ever made, and it's held up beautifully all these years. And I appreciate that the Nelson family heirs have gone out of their way to make this series available in physical media for my generation and those before me that are still around and generations after to enjoy. And I've also I think I've talked about The Real McCoys. I'm finishing that one up, season 5 on that. And then a series that I had never heard of until I saw mention of it on a DVD forum. It's called Home Theater Forum, and it's a show that was based on the movie How to Marry a Millionaire. Remember that starred Marilyn Monroe and Betty Grable and Lauren Bacall back in 1953. But there was a television series based on that, and that show was just and is just wonderful. Yes, it's dated because, women don't generally do that, try to look for husbands, rich husbands, and all that kind of stuff. But the show is really good. It was tightly written. It was just wonderful, and good performances. And of course, Barbara Eden is the one who is of most interest to audiences today. And it's unbelievable that she is 92 years old. My God, where the hell did the years go? And she played the totally ditzy Loco Jones, and she played it to perfection. And she was ably assisted by Laurie Nelson in the first season, and Mary Anders, who later quit show business to be involved in customer service coordinator for Litton Industries. And then she passed away in 2012. Laurie Nelson passed away in 2020. And of course, Barbara Eden is still alive. But it was and is a great show. And I think because it was syndicated, that is why I had never even heard of the series. But I bought seasons 1 and 2, and so there were like 52 episodes altogether on that. But I recommend that if anybody ever comes across it. I think there's episodes on YouTube that you can watch. Anyway, and yeah, I just, probably the most shocking thing that happened last month was Keith Richards actually making it to 80 years old. His obituary was written decades ago, just like Brian Wilson's was, just like Eric Clapton's was. Everybody had been doing a 50-year death watch on these guys, and they're still with us, and I hope they hang around for a lot more years. I don't know so much about Eric Clapton because he's not necessarily a nice person, but you don't wish any ill on even people that aren't all that nice. But yeah, Keith Richards, good Lord, 80 years old. Who the hell would have thought? And then, which kind of, I segue into this because Tom Smothers died last week, and he was 86 years old. He'd battled cancer. And he and his brother started out real young in show business, and they had kind of like a comedy folk duo, and they were very good at it. And it wasn't long before television networks, CBS specifically, took notice of their ability. They had been on, among other shows, on the Judy Garland show, and they were quite good on that. And then they had a sitcom, short-lived sitcom in the mid-60s called The Smothers Brothers Show, where Tommy was an angel or something, and I don't remember all of it because it only lasted like a season. But so it fizzled, and then in 1967, I think at the beginning of that year, like mid-season, 66, 67, they were offered a variety show. And the most shocking thing, because some of the old, well, a lot of the episodes were in reruns on cable, and at least parts, you know, like edited episodes, and they also had some of it on DVD. And the thing that shocked me the most about it was how young those guys were, because Tommy was about almost 30 and Dick was only 28. And it, you know, it's just shocking as goddamn hell how young they were. But their show appealed, unlike most variety programs, it appealed to younger people. They also had a lot of rock music acts there. And they also tackled what would be considered controversial issues. You know, the Vietnam War was raging. There was a lot of stuff going on in the country. And they would poke fun at a lot of stuff. And go after sacred cows, you might say. And they had a lot of run-ins with the censors at CBS. You know, Pete Seeger was one that they went after because he had had anti-war songs. He'd been blacklisted, I believe. If I wanted to look it up, I don't really want to look this up because I'm too damn lazy, and I don't want to be on here for 10 years. You know, 30 minutes like that one time that I did it. But anyway, they started having a lot of complaints from viewers. CBS did. And so they wanted to see what the scripts were. They wanted to see what the acts were, what was going to be said on the show. And you know, the brothers, especially Tommy, who basically was the quote-unquote brains of the pair. Not that Dick was stupid by any means, but Dick had other interests outside of show business. And not to say Tommy didn't either, but Tommy was more inclined to stand his ground, you might say, on censorship. And they had trouble all the time throughout the run of the series. And then one time, there was this absolutely stupid monologue or skit or whatever by David Steinberg, and it was a sermonette or something, and you probably can find it on YouTube, and I know that I have it on one of the DVD official sets that the Smothers Brothers put out. But it was the most stupid goddamn thing. It wasn't even funny. It really wasn't even funny. But here they had all these outrages from Middle America, the Bible Belt, and such like that. And so the censors came down hard on them. And eventually the brothers were fired because their show was canceled in, I think, April of 1969 or thereabouts. And then they successfully sued CBS for breach of contract. I think they filed a $30 million lawsuit, but the network settled. They settled for, I think, $750,000. But it really wasn't the money. It was all about a principle of not censoring material. But anyway, the brothers stood their ground, and there's a lot that's been written about their battles with the censors. But anyway, it was kind of sad that Tommy had passed away, and it just, just another person from my youth that's leaving the scene. And so that was kind of, it was kind of sad. And he was a figure of note, both brothers. And I'm glad to see how close they were. They really loved each other. And, their mother, and he had a sister too. Both of them had a sister, and I think she just passed away a while ago, or about a year ago, I think. And I think she was the youngest. But their dad had died in the Second World War, or shortly afterwards. And so their mom raised them. And I don't know, Mom probably remarried. I think probably she did. But if I wanted to look it up. But anyway, I don't want to go on too long about this. But then there was something that was brought to my attention today. I talked to my sister, and she said, "Did you hear about such and such?" And you know what? This probably should be national news, and it probably will be. But the scariest thing that I think there is, when you think about serial killers and all of that, the scariest ones have to be in the medical profession, because you are literally putting your life in their hands. They have absolute power of life and death. And it is scary as hell if you get somebody that's so fucked up that they can kill, whether they intended to kill or not. And this is here locally that this happened. And it was reported Friday, I guess it was. But I'll just read it to you, and hopefully, I'm sure that it's going to be national headlines, because it's pretty scandalous. Sources say that several Asante Rogue Regional Medical Center patients are dead, and police are now conducting a criminal investigation. NBC5 News broke the story last night, which was Friday, that police are investigating at least one patient death at Rogue Regional Medical Center. Now several Asante sources are shedding more light into this tragedy. Actually, here they say a handful of patients died. Some say 9, others say 10 as a result of infections at the hospital. They say it was caused by a nurse switching medication with tap water. Oh my God. Multiple sources say an Asante Rogue Regional Medical Center nurse injected multiple patients with tap water in an attempt to cover up their misuse of the hospital's supply of pain medication, specifically fentanyl. We've told RMC's intensive care unit, we're told, I should say, as many as 9 or 10 people developed infections and died. Medford police declined to provide details, only confirming it is investigating a situation at RRMC. Our sources tell us the tap water, which is not sterile, led to multiple infections of Pseudomonas, however it's pronounced. The host of our Docs on Call program, Dr. Robin Miller, says that type of infection can be very dangerous in people in poor health, exactly the kind of people you'd find in the hospital's ICU. Dr. Miller said it could cause sepsis, pneumonia, it could infect all the organs, so it could be a very severe infection. At this time, no one has been charged with a crime. Well, they know who did it. And it's just a disaster. Absolutely a disaster. And not to mention the lawsuits that are coming down the pike. But I'm surprised national news outlets have not picked this up yet. But this is scary as hell. The hospital declined an interview, but provided a brief statement. We are distressed to learn of this issue. We reported it to law enforcement and are working closely with them. And Meanwhile, Dr. Robin Miller says switching out a patient's medication for personal misuse, what our sources say the nurse did in this case, is called drug diversion. Dr. Miller said, "You don't think of medical professionals doing this, but 10% of medical professionals divert drugs. 10%. That's a lot." According to various reports, fentanyl is one of the most commonly diverted drugs. It happens across the country in hospitals. But what Dr. Miller doesn't understand is why tap water was allegedly used. Holy shit. Anyway, I expect more will be said about this. But that's a hell of a damn thing when you can't really even trust who the hell your doctors and nurses and other medical personnel are, that they could do something like this. But anyway, on that happy note, I don't have much else to comment on. I'll call it good.